Humans have a love-hate relationship with change. We need it for growth and variety, and yet we hate the upheaval it brings into our lives. Resilience seems to be the answer. So let's explore a new kind of conversation where we look at the turbulence of change and the resilience that enables us to not only survive it, but to truly thrive from it. I'm Paula Shaw, life transition expert, grief counseling specialist, and author. I'll be spotlighting influential people on this podcast, people who have taken the steps to change it up. So join us as we share valuable information to help you navigate the rocky waters of change. Come on, jump on in. Welcome to Change It Up Radio. I'm your host, Paula Shaw. And once again, I am so delighted that you're here with me because I have someone special to introduce you to today, and someone who I hope will be of great help to many of you with the issues that you're dealing with grief. You know, we've been talking this whole season about grief. We've been talking about how we just think I'm just going to remove these glasses for a moment so I can see you. We've been talking about a season of grief is what we are calling this particular season of shows. We've looked at the grief that comes when your body is physically injured with Gary Plummer. We've looked at the grief of foster kids. We've looked at the grief of so many different segments of society, those that are abused, those that are traumatized. And one of the things that I really hope to be teaching you in this series, or helping you to understand, I guess is a better way to put it, is that grief is not just about death. Grief is about loss. Any significant loss will result in grief. And grief is a unique experience for every one of us. We talked in that first episode about there being no 5 stages of grief. That's one of my pet peeves out there, that people think they have to go through these specific stages in order to heal. There are no 5 stages. Grief is unique for everyone. There are certain commonalities that people experience, and there are dimensions that people experience. Like very often, the first dimension is shock, disbelief, disorientation, that oh my God stuff. And very often, people experience tears and anguish and sadness and despair. There are many different things we have in common, but not everybody will grieve the same way. And the reason for that is because we all grew up with different parents. We all grew up in different life circumstances. We were all surrounded with different people. And all of that impacts the way we process our emotions and the way we grieve. So for some people, grief shows up like total disorientation, fogginess, inability to focus. For other people, grief shows up in anger, agitation. I can't believe this happened. For other people, it might show up in anxiety, fearfulness about going forward in life, fearfulness about whether or not they're safe out there in the world. There are many, many ways it can show up. And I guess my point is there's no wrong way. Whatever you're feeling, whatever is happening with you, it's okay. I've had widows call me and tell me, I've been drinking for a week and I don't care. And everybody's worried about me. And I say to them, as long as this pattern doesn't go on long term, if this is what you need to do in the beginning to feel your feelings and process this horror that you've gone through, then don't let anybody tell you how to grieve. And I'm going to say that again to all of you. Don't let anybody tell you how to grieve, because it's your unique experience. In the summer that my former husband and our family dog of 14 years died within a month of each other, my two children and I went through a very tough experience. And because I had them in my life, I had a full-time practice. I had things I needed to still be able to function and do. And so I not only did my grief work, you all know, I'm a founding member of the Association of Comprehensive Energy Psychology. So I started really combing through the tools of energy psychology to hopefully help me heal and process and shift more rapidly. And I made a promise to myself, and that promise was I'll do one thing every day. Just one. Maybe it was just lighting a candle and meditating. That was all I could do. Maybe it was taking that gratitude walk outside, but I did one thing every day. And then I started incorporating tools and modalities, energy tools and modalities, working with my biofield, working with chakras, working with meridian points, tapping meridian points. And I began to experience a shift. I began to experience a healing far more rapid than I expected. And I don't know if I've shared this story with you before. It's in my book, which many of you know, are familiar with, Grief, When Will This Pain Ever End? In my book, I talk about how 3 months after the death of our family dog and Gary, my former husband, I was sitting in the office with a client who he was sobbing. His dog had been run over before his eyes the day before. And I said to him, I can't know exactly how you feel. And I'm going to pause there for a moment, because one of the things I want you all to remember is never to say, I know how you feel, because you don't, right? Because it's their unique experience. But I paused and I said, I can't know exactly how you feel, but I have some idea, because I too lost my dog. And he stopped and he looked at me and he went, when? And I said, 3 months ago. And he could see that I was functioning pretty well. And from where he was, as we all are in the beginning, he couldn't imagine there would ever be a time he would feel better. And he looked at me kind of incredulously and he said, are you on meds? And I chuckled and I said, no, I'm not. And he said, how did you do it? And that actually was the moment that the idea was conceived in my head to write that book, Grief, When Will This Pain Ever End? Because I realized I had found this myriad of tools that had helped me so much. And some of the most important ones were the energy tools that I used. And that's why I'm excited. Today, I'm going to introduce you to Art Giser, who has created his own body of work and something that's called Energetic NLP that helps people deal with their issues of loss and grief. And bonus, guys, he's going to be doing a process with us today that you will get to experience. So you really need to stick around and experience and get to know Art Giser. So let me tell you just a little bit more about him. He is an energetic NLP trainer. He's a medical researcher, healer, intuitive, leadership, and team specialist for major corporations. He's had 39 years of studying psychic development and energetic and spiritual healing. And he's been blessed to receive 2 empowerments directly from the Dalai Lama of Tibet. So, ladies and gentlemen, please let me introduce to you Art Giser. Join me, Art. Hi.
Hi, Paula, and I'm so happy to be on your show because we haven't known each other very long, but we are so aligned, and everything that you said, I mean, that would be worth the show for everybody. just the things you said already about there's no right way to have grief, not to tell people how they feel, and the other things you were saying, that would be worth the whole hour, and we'll be doing a lot more.
Oh, thank you so much, Art. I know in our first conversation, I felt so aligned with you, and I too was very, very excited about having you on the show. So I always like to kind of like, as in the words of oh darn, now I'm not going to remember. Remember The Sound of Music? Who's the actress I'm thinking of?
Julie Andrews.
Julie Andrews, God bless you. Let's start at the very beginning. So, Art, tell us a little bit about how it began for you, and were you gifted as a child?
That was I gifted as a child is an interesting question. I mean, I can now look back on certain things that I recognize what they were, but at the time, uh, I and I should say for everybody, I think everybody is gifted in terms of
Yes.
energy and healing abilities, and I know you believe that too. I had hints here and there, but almost as long as I can remember, I was interested in two things. One was science, and the other was the powers of the unconscious mind and spirituality and ESP. And there was a TV show at the time. This was very unusual, that was teaching yoga, and I was in elementary school, and I'm watching
Mhm.
that and learning a little bit about Buddhism, Hinduism at a time when nobody I knew knew
Yeah.
anything in the names, and it was kind of a weird Eastern thing. So I've always had a fascination with it, but it was getting incredibly stuck in my life that it really was the catalyst of all this.
Stuck in what way?
Well, I graduated from college, I had a degree in biology, and by the time I finished the degree, I knew that wasn't. I found it fascinating, but I knew that really wasn't my life path.
Mhm.
And back then most of us weren't entrepreneurial, and we were looking for a career that you thought you would
Exactly.
have for the rest of your life.
Right.
And so I had no idea what to do with myself, and I had just moved to San Francisco, and I thought, well, maybe I'll apply for a research job. And I applied for one at the University of California. I had like bare minimum requirements. I never thought anybody would hire me, but I got hired to be a researcher, and I ended up managing this research lab
Mhm.
studying the effects of estrogen and progesterone on the tissues in a woman's body. Nowadays, people call it epigenetic research. And
Ah.
I was proud of what we were doing. I worked with great people. We had fabulous views. We'd go camping on weekends. I mean, everything was fine except for I didn't belong there. And you know, and but I had no idea, what I just couldn't figure out what I wanted to do with myself. And I was interested in things like psychology, but I wasn't into like traditional psychology at the time where, oh, after a minimum of 5 years of therapy to get anything done. And the way
Yeah.
people thought, it didn't seem right to me. And it seemed very rigid in their thinking. And I'd always kind of believed that something was going to appear that was going to show me the way.
Mm.
As the years went on, I thought, maybe I'm lying to myself, and what's wrong with me? And I mean, like I say, I had true love. Everything else in my life was fine, other than I was disappointed that I couldn't figure out what I should be doing in life.
Mhm.
I went to a talk on intuition, and they were selling some books there, which we'll come back to that in a moment. But I went outside during a break, and this was in the olden days when people had bulletin boards with flyers on it. And I was just looking at them, and one read neuro-linguistic programming. And I read the words, and it felt like a lightning bolt hit me on top of my
Ah,
head and straight through my body.
yes.
And I was like stunned. And the scientist in me was going, "What was that?" And the mystic in me was going, "What do you think it was? It was a sign." So I walked back in the room, and I'm kind of stunned. And I look at the table, and all the books are on intuition, except for one book is on NLP, neuro linguistic programming. And I thought, okay, I can't ignore this. Bought the book, and everything in my life started changing.
Oh my goodness. And you know what? At this very point, Art, we have to take a little break, but when we come back, let's continue that story because I love these stories. They really are so all about divine synchronicities, right? Like tuning in, getting the message about what we're supposed to do and who we are. So we'll continue that story in just a moment. We'll be right back.
Is living in today's fast-paced world making you feel stressed and out of balance? Are anxiety, sleeplessness, depression, lack of focus, or weight gain robbing you of your relationship and your energy? If you're ready for change, you need to call Paula Shaw. Paula helps you identify and eliminate self-sabotaging thinking and behavior. Using a wide variety of mind-body techniques, she provides her clients with the most effective processes for their specific needs. To book a session with Paula, call 858-480-9234. That's 858-480-9234.
Welcome back to Change It Up Radio. I'm your host, Paula Shaw, and I am here with a very special man who has developed Energetic NLP that we're going to be talking about shortly, which is a really interesting energy-based method of working with grief. This is Art Giser, who I'm here with today, who I'm delighted to be with today. And Art, in the last segment, was telling us a little bit about how this all evolved for him. So, Art, we just left off where you bought your first NLP book. Tell us more.
It's kind of a little cliffhanger. Actually, I got home, started reading the book, and said, "Don't start with this book." And I grumbled, and I ordered the book they said to start with. And it was like, finally, things were really making sense to me, other than what I thought were really extravagant claims that they could cure phobia in one session and all of these things. And I thought, well, everything they're saying makes sense, but these are really pretty far out claims. And but I just was compelled to learn about it. So I took the very next course that was supposed to be super good. And it was actually an advanced course, and I had no reason to be there. I mean, not no reason. I had no qualifications to be there. Everybody else were like trainers and master practitioners.
Oh, wow.
This was in Marin County, north of San Francisco. And I had, it was a 5-day session, then another 5-day session. I had to take all these vacation days. It was, way more than I'd ever paid for any kind of a program. And totally changed my life. And after that, I went back and started with the beginning programs. But in that program and the later ones, I met people who were into energy work and healing and psychic development, and they started teaching me things. I had studied a little bit up till then, and they introduced me to some of my first teachers. And I realized that you could do a lot of miraculous work with people through the NLP, the neuro-linguistic programming. You could do miraculous work with people through energetic processes and spiritual principles. And I started going, well, what if I weave these together? And I actually forgot about this, but I used to think it was cheating at first. Like I would get with somebody, and all of a sudden I just kind of know what was going on and what to do. And I would feel like it's kind of cheating. People would keep going, Art, who made up this rule? You're not cheating.
Exactly.
But I was teaching it too. So I kind of kept them separate. And I thought, no, I'm just going to weave this all together. And that was the birth of Energetic NLP.
It's so cool. I didn't know this part of your story, but in a way, that's sort of the same kind of thing that happened to me when I was trying to find my way out of that grief that I was in, because I had been learning energy psychology practices and I had studied grief. And so, I sort of melted the two together really for my own use, because I was in kind of a desperate situation. But out of that evolved, a whole different way of dealing with people in grief, and also a different way of looking at people and their issues, that the people who came to me that wanted to do energy psychology work. Because I came to believe, Art, and I'm interested in how you feel about this. I kind of felt like, my original training was as an alcohol and drug abuse counselor. And what I began to see was that all addictions were actually what I now call grief avoidance mechanisms. Usually they stem from some kind of loss that had been unhealed somewhere in this person's life. And then they became this energy that was so difficult to deal with or so painful that some kind of distraction, whether it was drinking or drugs or smoking or shopping or gambling or whatever it was, that was a distraction that helped them not feel the depth of the pain. What do you think about that?
It makes a lot of sense. And particularly, you think of the things that we can grieve about not being the kind of person we think we were supposed to be, or
Yeah.
that, that deep beliefs that you're not worthy or not lovable. So,
Mhm.
I hadn't looked at it that way before, but really all of those are a form of grief for
Yes.
either what you've lost or what never was, and
Yeah.
you feel like never will be.
Right. And think about it, don't we all have, especially when we're young, we have this vision of what our life is going to be. And when it turns out differently, which it almost always does, there's a loss built in there, isn't there?
Oh, uh, amazing. And again, these, in terms of self-concept, self-esteem, it can be just so wired in that people
Mhm.
feel like, there's no desire to face it because they feel like it's a truth,
Yes.
and a truth that can't be changed. And so then the only thing you can do is avoid it.
And one of the things I loved in your story
Mhm.
was, even though you grew up the same time I did, where, you were training to go to work for the company store,
Right.
you found the company store, so to speak, but you knew in your heart and your gut it wasn't the place for you to be. It wasn't where you could soar. And you took a risk and trusted your gut and tried something else. That's such a huge piece for so many people if they're going to change the path they're on and evolve. But so often that's a terrifying risk to take.
Absolutely. And I always tell people, there's two basic ways you can do it. Some people like just jump off the cliff and do the massive change. Um, and other people do more like I did. I started seeing clients a couple nights a week and seeing clients over the weekend. I started
Mhm.
teaching NLP programs at community ed in different places. So I eased my way into. I knew I was going to go there, but I thought, it, people go, "Are you going to quit your job?" And I go, "Well, I'm still taking all these courses, and it's a really good school job, and I'm not going to quit to go wash dishes or something."
Right,
So
right.
I allowed myself to transition, and I want to emphasize that because often people think they either have to stay where they are or leap,
Yeah.
and sometimes leaping is perfect, but there is that third path where you can transition.
Mhm. You can transition gracefully and not necessarily, you know, be agonizing about how you're gonna pay your bills.
Exactly. Yeah.
I love that. I love that. Why create trauma when you don't need to? So, Art, tell us a little bit about, how do you see grief energetically, and how does energetic NLP work, so to speak?
Well, the big thing that was missing to me from NLP and even from a lot of energy work is, so all energy workers do a lot of clearing of energies.
Mhm.
But I was lucky, some of my early teachers really emphasized that often, whether you're doing it psychologically through something like NLP or doing it energetically, what you were healing wasn't really the person's. So since we're in the womb, we're absorbing energies from other people, including grief energies. And we
Yes.
do that our entire life. And if you believe in past lives, we bring it in from other lifetimes. So whatever the emotion is, whether it's grief or anger or, or going through the whole list, most of the time when I read somebody's energy, 70 to 95 or more percent of the energy isn't theirs. And what I was taught, and I found to be true, is that you can handle your authentic energy. I mean, you might feel terrible, but you can handle
Mhm.
it, and you
Mhm.
can even grow and thrive through it. You can't handle other people's grief. I mean, I should say you can handle it, you can't heal it.
Yeah.
And people are constantly trying to deal with grief that it just isn't theirs. And
Mm.
so one of the big things we do in energetic NLP is separate out other people's grief energy that's trapped in your cells and in your chakras and your energy field. And then when people connect with their authentic grief, again, they may still feel really bad, but they also feel like it's okay. Like, well, I feel bad, and I should feel bad. Somebody I loved died, or my dog died, or I lost a job. And that's why I love the way you started this, is like, I think particularly in the West and in the US, it's particularly in the US, it's like we think we're never supposed to feel bad, and we're always trying to fix it in other people.
Right.
One of the worst things about grief is everybody's trying to fix you all the time.
Yes.
Remember, I would tell people, like, I've lost the love of my life. I feel bad. I'm okay with that. That's actually the way I'm supposed to feel for a while.
Yeah.
Not,
Yeah.
you know. Um, so again, for everybody listening, and we will go through some simple techniques to start releasing other people's emotional energy, and you'll find the more you do that, the more you'll go, okay, I don't feel good. I'm not enjoying this,
Right.
but it's part of my life, and I will grow through it, and I will thrive on the other end of it.
You know, I'm loving what you're saying, because the concept or the idea that we can survive dealing with what's in our own energy. But yeah, when you think about it, if you take on the grief of your ancestors and your parents and all those people, it is too much. I mean, you can even see it. It's just overwhelming. And I had a client who once came to me, and she said, she was a Jewish woman,
Mhm.
and she said, I grew up in Israel. My neighbors, my parents, everybody, they were wonderful. They all loved me. Many of them had lived through the Holocaust, but I obviously, she had not been through that. She was
Mhm.
now living in Rancho Santa Fe, had a
Mhm.
great life, and she could not understand why she was fearful and anxious all the time. She couldn't enjoy her life.
Mhm.
She couldn't be in her own reality. And she was always worrying that maybe the police were going to come and arrest them. And what I saw, because I have done some studying with epigenetics, was
Mhm.
that wasn't her stuff.
Right.
She was dealing with the ancestry, the lineage, and the environment she'd grown up with. She had what you would call other people's stuff she was dealing with. And so I helped her to unleash that. And I mean, she just started soaring. Everything shifted. It was amazing. So, what I really am excited about is we're
Mhm.
going to take a quick break here. And then when we come back, let's have you do your stuff, Art. I
Great.
can't wait for our listeners to experience it. All right, we'll be right back. Paula Shaw here. I'm thrilled that LifeWave phototherapy patches, which use no drugs or chemicals, have become a part of my life and my business. My family and I all use their wearable patch technology, and the results are life-changing. My parents in their 90s used the X39 patch, which activates stem cells, reverses aging, and improves the function of every area of the brain. I love X39 because I can work out with the 30-year-olds with no problem. And it's erased my fine lines and given my skin a youthful glow. LifeWave patches use a patented form of phototherapy, frequencies of light, to safely boost health and wellness at the cellular level. No drugs. To learn more, go to my website, lifewave.com/safe health. That's lifewave.com/safe health. Paula Shaw here. I'm thrilled that LifeWave phototherapy patches, which whoops.
No, sorry.
The commercial was so good, we almost ran it twice. All right, Paula Shaw here. Welcome back. And in this segment of my show, my guest today, Art Giser, who is a master of a technique called Energetic NLP that he actually has developed. He's about to do some work with us. So if you are listening or viewing, please take a nice deep breath and let's get ready to experience some of this technique with Art. Okay, Art, take it away.
Great. And if anybody's listening to this while they're driving, go ahead and turn it off, because one of my specialties is remote energy work. And I think Paul is too. And the energy will be flowing. So whether you think that's an issue or not, never listen to anything that I do while you're driving. And there's a concept in energetic NLP called your miraculous self. Your miraculous self. It's different than your high self. Your high self just exists. Your miraculous self only kind of sort of exists until you work with it. It's like a muscle in your body that you've never used or rarely used. But once you start using it, it gets strong and supple and can do things. And your miraculous self is when your spirit, with its vast awareness, and your deep inner human wisdom, with its very practical wisdom, are aligned and working together to guide you, nurture you, heal you, and support you. And you might think they automatically work together. They don't. Parts of your life that really flow, they may be doing that. But just because your spirit wants certain things for you and your deep inner human wisdom wants certain things for you, they're not automatically aligning with one another.
Art,
And
just for clarification, because just in case any of our viewers are a little confused, are either of these what's the word I want? Your soul. Would your soul be similar to any of these, or is it one of the two things you just described, or are we talking kind of separate entities?
well, fantastic question, and it's kind of a complicated answer. That, a lot of people and systems, and mine is one of them, differentiate between your spirit and your soul. And
Okay.
people use the terms to mean opposite things. But when I am saying your spirit, I mean the higher frequencies of your non-physical self. And what I call the soul will be the lower frequencies of your non-physical self.
Okay.
And again, people use those words really differently. But what
Mhm.
I'm calling your spirit is the aspect of you that sees the big picture. It doesn't have wants, needs, or
Okay.
desires, loves you in your human life, and is kind of like the perfect parent giving you permission to do a lot of different things.
Mhm.
Where your soul is what I would call the lower frequencies of your non-physical self. And it's the way I read it, what I'm calling the soul. And it's kind of just a click up from your personality. It has
Okay.
wants, needs, and fears, and ancestral programming and past life programming, where when you go to higher frequencies, your spirit doesn't have that.
Ah, okay.
And um, and when I use terms like essence and deep inner human wisdom, your spirit knows what those things are.
Mhm.
So one thing's in energetic NLP is, while we do work with concepts and conscious thinking, most of the time we try to go beyond it, because you'll always be limited by what you believe. So
Yes.
in an energetic NLP process, we first create your miraculous self, which is easy, takes a
Mhm.
minute, and then we put your miraculous self in charge of what happens. So the conscious mind just sets an intention, gives permission, puts the miraculous self in charge. And then the fourth thing is consciously just use your imagination and pretend it's working. And then later you can analyze it to death. But when you pretend that it's working, and this comes from NLP, it
Uh,
accesses the abilities of your unconscious mind. So
ah,
you don't need to believe it's working. Just like a 5-year-old going, "Oh, I'm pretending I'm an astronaut."
right.
It-
Okay.
and the more playful people are, even with grief, and when we're doing this work, the more powerful it will be.
Okay.
So first, I'll take people through setting up their miraculous self, and then we'll do a process that they can continue to do on their own. Really simple, that allows you to clear other people's energy out of your own emotions. You can do it
Oh,
with grief,
great.
any other emotional state,
I love
and
that.
super simple. And the hardest thing about energetic NLP is it's really simple, and people try to complicate it. So right
How
now,
unlike us humans.
yes, exactly. And it's why I developed it, because I complicated everything.
Ah.
But also because I believe that I don't care if you are the Dalai Lama or a saint, or how evolved you are, you're always trapped in your conscious beliefs, but your
Yes.
spirit isn't. And so we
Yes.
always want to go beyond that. And
Mm, I love
so,
that distinction. That's really good. That's the first time I've actually heard it put that way. I like
mm,
that a lot.
oh, thank you. Yeah, it's really key to energetic NLP is that, um, uh, I'll tell people, don't believe what I'm telling you. I don't believe it. It's what I think at
Yeah.
this moment in time.
Mhm.
So for everybody listening, if you want to participate in this, and I hope you do, it's really simple. Just set your intention to, from your conscious mind, go, I want my miraculous self to form now. Just set your intention. Give 100% permission for that to happen, because as sentient beings, we have a right to make choices. So just go, I'm choosing to have a miraculous self. And then just imagine and pretend right now that your spirit and your deep inner human wisdom, your spirit knows what that is, are coming together and they're aligning to guide you, nurture you, heal you, and support you. And just pretend that's happening. Imagine it. And then just imagine it exists. Just pretend right now that it exists. And the process we're going to do right now is not intended to get rid of grief. It's intended to clear other people's grief energy that's trapped in you. And again, it's a simple process. People will be able to do it with other emotions later if they want to. And the belief in this is that your own authentic grief, you can thrive with it, you can grow with it, you can more than handle it. It's other people's energies that give us the problem. And I've been doing this work for many, many years now. And like you were saying in your story earlier, Paula, that once people clear the ancestral and other people's grief, everything changes immediately.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
So set your intention right now that you're going to release other people's grief energy from your physical body and from your energy field and chakras. And we're not necessarily trying to get all of it, whatever's the right amount. It's a real simple process. If it goes in stages, whatever your miraculous self wants. So that's the intention. Give 100% permission for that to happen and to receive the benefits. Give 100% permission for your miraculous self to be in charge. And then imagine your grief like it's a ball of energy out in front of you. And then let your miraculous self ground it into the earth. And then ask your miraculous self to drain out of it other people's grief energy. Not because it's good or bad or positive or negative, but because it's not yours. And just imagine grief energies that aren't yours are draining off into the earth. And often we've absorbed grief energies from other people trying to heal them. So the energies are going into the earth, and the earth has the power to transmute those energies. So they're not going back to the other people. It's just going into the earth, and the earth will turn it into pure energy and use it. And then you ask your miraculous self to fill your authentic grief with earth and universal energies that will help you work with it, grow through it, thrive through it, function through it. And just pretend it's filling up with energies and your miraculous self is figuring it all out. You don't need to figure anything out. Then you bring it back into your heart chakra and let the energy spread throughout your body. And then you take a couple easy, deep breaths. And then again, put a symbol out for your grief. Again, let the earth and your miraculous self ground it. Imagine that other people's energies are draining from it. And then imagine that it's being filled with energies from the earth, from the universe, and from your own beliefs, from God, according to whatever you believe, energies that will help you handle, deal with, grow through, and thrive from your grief. And just bring that into you, into your heart, and again, absorb those energies. And we're going to do it one more time, this time along with your grief, energies of judgment, of guilt, criticism, particularly other people's, are going into that ball of energy. and let your miraculous self just drain off of it into earth any of the energies that aren't yours and aren't helpful, or energies that are from the past that don't belong in the present. Particularly any ongoing yin energies of being not good enough, not worthy. Let those just drain off, just however much goes off easily right now. And then your miraculous self fills that ball of energy again with energies that will help you with your grief, help you thrive and grow through it, help you honor your grief, and then bring it back in and again absorb the energies. And this is a process you can do anytime. Now that you have a miraculous self, the more you use it, the more effective it becomes. So the steps, again, for people are really easy. You set your intention that you're going to clear other people's emotional energies, whether it's ancestral or past life or wherever. You're going to clear those out of your body and energy field. You put a ball of energy for grief or whatever emotion out in front of you. And again, you can include things like if there's guilt or judgment around it. Your miraculous self drains out whatever amount of that energy is just right. I think of like Goldilocks, whatever's just right for right then. Energy works faster, and more is not the same as better. So whatever's just right.
Yes.
It's filled with energies that will help you and support you through your process, help you grow and thrive through it. You bring that ball of energy back into your heart, absorb the energies, and then you repeat it 2 more times. And one of the times that this process is really powerful, and I encourage people, if this happens to you, to mentally rehearse doing it. If you wake up in the middle of the night overwhelmed with some emotional state, that's how I developed the technique. Is I had bad sinus problems at times, and I would wake up feeling like I couldn't breathe, and I'd be panicky. And one day I went, I should know. I have I should be able to figure out ways to work with this.
Yes.
I realized, like, oh, just put the energy out, drain it, fill it, bring it in, do it 2 times, and then I can go. Oh, now I can go back to sleep. So, and again, we're not trying to eliminate your authentic grief, but use this anytime when the grief is overwhelming, or, well, for people who've never done this, do it a number of times until you'll feel like the grief changes. It won't be gone, but it will be different, and it'll feel right. It's only. Would you agree with that, Paul? When it's really your grief, it feels right. It
Yes.
doesn't feel good, but it feels right.
And you know what I also love about this process, Art? So often I have observed people start to, in fact, recently I read a study talking about how feeling positive emotions can actually help you deal with grief because it causes a kind of a psychological reset. It kind of makes you aware, wow, there are parts of life out there that are good, and I maybe will be there again. But sometimes when people start to experience that, this idea that comes from our culture, our society, or whatever, that I should be sad for X amount of times makes them feel guilty about laughing, about experiencing joy. That's taking on somebody else's idea about the grief, right?
Oh, that is so important. And I remember my father died when I was 15, and I was actually giving him mouth-to-mouth resuscitation when he died. And it wasn't until 20 years later almost that I realized I had all this suppressed guilt around it. Not that I should have, but and I remember it after his funeral, people being at the house, and one of his really good friends saying, after funerals, it's always kind of a reunion too. And I hope he was talking to my brother and I, and he goes, I hope you're okay with, people are going to be laughing and having fun. And I went, and we went, no, we get it. It's, absolutely. So that knowing that we can mix that, or where's it, New Orleans, where they actually do these like jazz parades.
Yes, right. Yeah, they call it a something line. I can't remember. My daughter lived there. She's going to be really distraught. I didn't remember. But yeah, there's a parade kind of thing, and music and celebration.
In
And
fact,
I think, go ahead.
I was going to say, after someone dies, you may want to do it for months, or you might want to do it immediately, but really making it more of a celebration of their life without suppressing the grief.
Yeah.
But adding that in, remember when my great aunts died, and she was an immigrant herself, and I was at her funeral, and her daughter, and my cousin's daughter, my cousins were there, and they
Mhm.
were really sad. And then people got up and started talking, and all these immigrants that moved to the U.S. were going, Eva was the first person I met when came to the U.S., and she made me food, and she helped me adjust. And by the 10th person said that, we're all like smiling and beaming
Yes.
right there by the grave,
Mhm. Isn't that beautiful? Last week, Art, my guest, um, was an amazing woman. Raquel Yarborough is her name. Her
Mm,
sister was killed in the
mm,
middle of trying to help somebody who was in the midst of domestic violence. She
wow.
was killed. So it was a horror, and they weren't able to get to the hospital to be with her before she died.
Oh, wow.
So it was the most horrific of circumstances. And she had a teenage daughter. So you can imagine
Mm,
the energy surrounding this horrible thing, in people, especially when a death happens that way. There's this how could it happen thing, this anger at God, this why me kind of energy, with the family. And I said to her, how did you get through it? And she said, the first thing we did, because we knew this kind of thing is either gonna, how did she put it? It's either gonna stop you or ground you, or it'll lift you up,
mm,
if you survive it. So the first thing they did as a family was gathering to talk about all these wonderful aspects of her sister, who, by the way, was her twin,
oh,
all
wow.
these wonderful aspects of her life, of her
Wow.
personality, of the way she lived, of what she meant to other people. It's
Mm,
exactly what you're saying. And the energy of that
mhm.
really helped to lift them up above the energy of the horror of her being killed.
Oh, that's a beautiful story.
Ah,
Inspiring.
yes. And what you're saying, I think, is so important and so inspiring. And really important information for us, especially to counteract that guilt that I talked about that people
Mhm.
sometimes feel when they experience a moment of joy after a serious loss.
Well,
So, Art, we're going to take a quick break, and
I
then let's come back and finish this conversation that I am loving so much. You're going to have to come back.
oh, I'd
All
love to.
right. We'll be right back.
For those looking to improve their lives, there's nobody better to turn to than Paula Shaw. Paula helps people regain successful lives by identifying and eliminating self-sabotaging behavior using a multitude of mind-body techniques to identify and resolve their core issues. Working with a wide variety of healing modalities, she provides her clients with the most effective process for their specific needs. To book a session with Paula, call 858-480-9234. That's 858-480-9234.
Welcome back to Change It Up Radio. I am here with my amazing guest, Art Giser. And if you just joined us, you've got to go back and watch the beginning of this show because we just did an amazing process. Art is the creator of Energetic NLP, and he just took us through the process. And I'm still whoa, I mean, I want to talk about it for another 2 hours because it was so interesting and so powerful. And Art, so I want to ask you a question. Why is well, first of all, I love the creation of the miraculous self. And would you define one more time for our listeners and our viewers, what is your miraculous self?
So your miraculous self is when your spirit, with its vast awareness, and your deep inner human wisdom, with its very practical wisdom, come together, are aligned to nurture you, heal you, guide you, and support you. And what I'm calling your spirit, because everybody uses that word differently, are literally the higher frequencies of your non-physical self. And not higher as in superior, but higher. And
Yes.
at that level of the being that we are, your spirit knows why you're here, what your life's about, how everything in your life, including the tragedies, are part of the unfolding of humanity and the universe. And then but it can be kind of out of touch in some ways with your minute by minute life. And where
Yes.
your deep inner human wisdom can kind of go, yeah, I know that's a valid spiritual path, but I don't like it. Can we can we do something different? You
I love that. And why is visualization so powerful to the mind, the brain? Why is it is it like you were saying, pretend, see it. I was right with you. I was seeing it all. I see these beings now. Why is that so powerful to the brain?
Well, let me answer that first in a little bit of a lateral way. Is that for those people who aren't good visualizers, and I used to be one of them, if you pretend that you're seeing it, your unconscious mind will see it. So for
Ah,
those of you that go, I can't visualize,
yeah.
just pretend that you're seeing it. And
Mm,
what happens in NLP, we would say that our mind tends to communicate either through visualizations, auditory sounds, words, the kinesthetic, the feelings in the body are the
mhm,
major ways that our mind is communicating. So when you visualize something, like an energetic NLP, and I haven't talked about this one yet, we use imaginary magnets a lot
mm,
because it's wired into everybody's unconscious mind that a magnet is this thing that has energy. You hold
mhm.
up a magnet, you hold up a pin, and you let go of the pin, and the magnet does all the work.
Stick, right.
So I'll have people imagine, and people can do this if they want, imagine a magnet out in front of you and give your miraculous self permission to release any energies from your energy field right now that aren't yours and aren't helpful, that it wants to release. And
Oh,
you're not trying to do everything at once.
mhm.
You just imagine the energies go to the magnet. And, and to answer more specifically your question, the unconscious mind understands symbols and metaphors. So if you go a magnet, it goes, oh, I know what that means. And it figures out how to do it.
Mhm.
Way. If you go, the magnet's going to the earth, and then the earth transmutes the energy,
Uh-huh.
your unconscious mind, your spirit, your miraculous self go, oh, we know how to do that. And then usually I have people do 4 magnets, one in front, above, behind, because a lot of energy hides behind our backs, literally. and
Oh,
and then one in the earth. And then I do want to say you always want to fill up. So in that last process, you were filling up with energy. So
yes.
anybody, if they do the magnets, at the end, ask your miraculous self to fill you up with more of your essence and earth and universal energies that will support you.
Mm,
When we're clearing energies, in energetic NLP, we don't talk about negative and positive energies.
mhm.
Because you tend to get into judgment, and then you get into resistance, and
Yes.
resist, persist. Um, so we just go, the energy is either yours or it's not. If
Ah,
it's not yours, it's either helpful or it's not. And your
mhm.
miraculous self can figure that out. So if the energy is not yours, not helpful, and it will go easily, you remove it. If there's trouble removing it, there's some other things you need to do. You don't force it. But a
Yes.
lot of energies will just go. And the other thing that we release into the magnets is energies that are ours, but they don't belong in present time. So when
Ah.
I was 15, doesn't belong here. You
Mhm,
know?
mhm.
So we're removing energies that aren't ours, aren't helpful, were ours, but don't belong in present time. And then you always fill up. And again, circling back, when you imagine things, and it doesn't have to make logical sense,
Yeah,
it
yeah.
activates these. Like some people, the little computer trash cans. I know people, they'll take a limiting belief and throw it in the trash can in their mind,
Mhm.
push delete, and it's gone. you know, and it works for a lot of people.
That is so fabulous. Art, unfortunately, we
Yes.
are running short on time. So I would love you to tell everybody, do you teach this process? What kind of work are you doing out there? And if they want to reach you or learn more from you, how can they do that?
Well, the first step I always recommend is if people go to blockbuster3.com, blockbuster, one word, 3.com. If you sign up there, you'll get 4 videos, one a day for 4 days, which will go much more thoroughly into what we did today and some more advanced techniques. So what do you do with those energies that won't leave, that fight? And
Yeah.
that's all free. And of course, then people are on my mailing list and they'll hear about everything else I'm doing. And like any legitimate email, there's a thing at the bottom you can unsubscribe. Very few people do, but
Mhm.
it's quick, you're gone. I'll miss you, but and I do. If anybody is listening from the UK, I am leading a program May 28th in the UK, and if they email me at art@energeticnlp.com, yeah, I can give them the information on that. Or if they sign up at Blockbuster, they'll hear about it. And that's a whole day on spiritual alchemy with follow-up online sessions.
Mm.
And also, if people are in the UK, I'll be speaking at the International Neurolinguistic Programming Conference, May 14th and 15th.
You're a busy guy, Art.
Yeah, it's in fact, I fly to Los Angeles a couple hours after we're done.
Oh my goodness, you are a busy guy. Well, I am so delighted that you were able to take this time today. And is there anything more you want to say in conclusion here of this amazing episode?
Thank you. Well, I'd like to circle back to what you started with. There's no right way to feel grief. And that was some of the best advice I ever got from other people too. It's like, it shows up in all kinds of bizarre ways and interesting ways. And the other thing is just to be kind to the people that are going to try to fix your grief all the time, and just to learn to be able to go, I'm okay. Just, be my friend, or just be with me right now.
Yes.
I would tell people constantly, what I'm feeling is appropriate. I'm okay with it. It's like,
I love that. That's such a good way to put it. What I'm feeling is appropriate and I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
I'm going to send you, Art, a copy of my book, Saying the Right Thing When You Don't Know What to Say. And I always tell people, if you go to my website, paulashaw.com, we have an article called 20 Things to Say and Not to Say to People in Emotional Pain. And one of the things on that list is, as the griever, some good responses to those well-meaning people who are trying to tell you how you should do it. Art, this has been just heavenly having you here. Thank you so much. And I'm not kidding. I definitely want you to come back, because we can talk a whole lot more about working with energy and shifting things in your life that you're not happy with. So we will talk about making that happen, Art.
Well, thank you. Thank everybody watching or listening. And I'm just honored to be on your show. I think what you're doing in the world is incredible. And everything you said about grief, I think is just, each one is like, what they say, drop the mic moment. So I'm looking forward to getting your book, because, boy, that is so needed. It's so needed.
Thank you, Art. Bless you. And thank you to my listeners and viewers. And we will see you next week for Change It Up Radio. Bye-bye.
Bye, all.
Thanks for joining me on Change It Up Radio. I hope you found this episode informative and entertaining. If you want to hear past shows, or you want to get information on being a guest or a sponsor of this show, go to changeitupradio.com. We all know that change is inevitable and it's necessary, but darn it, it's also tricky. My goal is to help you make the experience of change smoother and more productive. If you've benefited from this show, please subscribe to it, share it, and review it. That helps me to tune into what you really want to hear and what you really want to learn more about. Remember, you can find us on every major podcast platform, and also on YouTube, Facebook, Roku, Apple TV, and Amazon Fire. We look forward to seeing you next week for Change It Up Radio.